I'm exhausted to death, as the Empress Dowager, my good-for-nothing son, Emperor Xiao Chengyu, only knows how to eat, drink, and have fun all day, completely neglecting state affairs. I had no choice but to handle the government affairs myself, and in the end, I worked myself to death at my desk. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the year I was 30, just after the emperor had ascended the throne. This time, I've decided to just let things be, my son. It's not that your mother won't help you, it's that I've come to my senses. This kingdom is yours, not mine. Why should I worry myself sick over it? Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. Your Majesty the Empress Dowager. It's time for breakfast. I opened my eyes and saw the familiar face of Li Shun. Li Shun is my personal eunuch, who was utterly loyal to me in my previous life, after I worked myself to death. He followed me in death. Serve the meal. I stretched lazily and sat up. Li Shun was somewhat surprised. Usually at this time, I would already be handling government affairs. Why am I so leisurely today? What, is there something on my face? I asked with a smile. Your Majesty, no, it's just, it seems your Majesty is in a particularly good mood today, Li Shun said cautiously. Yes, I'm in a good mood, from now on. I'm going to enjoy life to the fullest and no longer bother with those annoying matters, I said. Li Shun looked puzzled. He didn't understand why I suddenly had such thoughts, but he didn't dare to ask further and could only silently withdraw to arrange the meal. The breakfast was lavish, with a variety of pastries, porridges, and dishes. In my previous life, I often just ate a few bites to get by while handling government affairs. Today, I'm in the mood to enjoy a proper meal. So I've decided to eat a little more. Your Majesty, Empress Dowager, these are freshly made jujube paste cakes. Please try one. Li Shun brought over a plate of jujube paste cakes and said. I took a bite, sweet but not cloying, truly delicious. Good, make more of this in the future, I said. Li Shun quickly nodded, but in his heart, he grew even more puzzled. Why was Her Majesty the Empress Dowager so leisurely today, taking the time to comment on the food, after finishing breakfast? I had someone bring a chair and sat in the garden to bask in the sun. The sun is warm and cozy, feeling very pleasant on the skin. I closed my eyes, enjoying this rare moment of leisure. Your Majesty the Empress Dowager, the Emperor requests an audience. After what felt like a long time, Li Shun's voice rang out. I opened my eyes and saw Xiao Chengyu standing not far away, looking quite anxious. Let him come over, I said. Xiao Chengyu hurried over and bowed to me. Mother, why didn't you go to the imperial study today? Xiao Chengyu asked. Oh, I didn't feel like going today. I'm just here to bask in the sun, I said. Xiao Chengyu looked surprised. He had never seen me so relaxed before. In the past, I would go to the imperial study every day to handle state affairs, rain or shine. Mother, what about the state affairs? Xiao Chengyu asked cautiously. State affairs, that's your responsibility, handle them yourself. I am already old and don't wish to worry about such matters anymore, I said. Xiao Chengyu widened his eyes, not expecting me to say that. Mother Empress, your son does not understand, Xiao Chengyu said. If you don't understand, then go and learn. Do you expect me to handle state affairs for you for the rest of your life? You have ascended the throne, you are the emperor now, it's time you learn to take responsibility yourself, I said. Xiao Chengyu lowered his head and remained silent. I knew he must be unhappy, but I didn't care. In my past life, I wore myself out for him and ended up exhausted to death. In this life, I will live for myself. Alright, you may go now, handle it as you see fit, I waved my hand and said. Xiao Chengyu had no choice but to bow and take his leave. Watching his retreating figure, I felt a pang of emotion. In my previous life, it wasn't until after I had worked myself to death that he began to regret. But by then it was too late. In this life, I hope he can come to his senses earlier and learn to take responsibility. The next few days, I spent my time quite leisurely, either sunbathing in the garden, strolling around the palace, or chatting with the palace maids and eunuchs. Meanwhile, Xiao Chengyu came to see me every day, either asking how to handle government affairs or complaining about how troublesome they were. Mother Empress, how should I comment on this memorial, Mother Empress? What should I do about this matter? Mother, I am so tired, I don't want to do this anymore. Every time I heard his complaints, I would just smile and tell him, figure it out yourself, you are the emperor, whatever you say goes. At first, Xiao Chengyu thought I was joking, but when he realized I was serious, he began to panic. Mother, are you abandoning me? Xiao Chengyu asked with a woeful expression. What nonsense are you talking? How could I ever abandon you? It's just that you've grown up and should learn to handle things on your own, I said, but I truly don't understand, Mother Empress. Please teach me once more, Xiao Chengyu said. I can teach you, but from now on, you must handle state affairs on your own and no longer rely on me. I said, all right. I will definitely handle state affairs on my own from now on and never rely on you, Mother, Xiao Chengyu quickly said. So, I began to teach Xiao Chengyu how to handle government affairs. But I only gave him a little guidance and did not make decisions for him. At first, Xiao Chengyu often made mistakes in handling government affairs, but I was not angry and just let him correct them himself. Gradually, Xiao Chengyu began to make some progress. Although he was still a bit slow in handling government affairs, he could at least manage some simple matters on his own. Watching his progress, I still feel somewhat relieved. After all, he is my son. And I do hope he can become a good emperor. However, I haven't let myself relax because of this. I still live a leisurely life every day, basking in the sun when I feel like it, going shopping when I want to, chatting with others as I please. I know that only by letting Xiao Chengyu truly learn to be independent can he become a qualified emperor. That day, while I was drinking tea in the garden, Li Shun hurried over. Your Majesty the Empress, it's terrible. After the court session, the emperor got into an argument with the ministers. Li Shun reported. Oh, what was the argument about? I asked. It seems it was about the empty state treasury. The ministers urged the emperor to find a solution, but he said he didn't know what to do. Then the ministers accused him of inaction. And that's when the argument broke out. Li Shun said. I smiled and said, that's a good thing. Let them argue. Once they're done, His Majesty will naturally find a way to resolve the issue. Li Shun looked surprised, not expecting me to say that. Your Majesty, aren't you going to advise the emperor? Li Shun asked. I won't go. This is his own matter. He must learn to face it himself, I said. Li Shun had no choice but to withdraw. Sure enough, it wasn't long before Xiao Chengyu came running in a rage. Mother, those ministers are too much. How dare they criticize me? I am the emperor, how can they do this? Xiao Chengyu said angrily. Then do you think what they said is right? I asked. I am certainly at fault, but they shouldn't accuse me like that, Xiao Chengyu said. Do you know how to solve the problem of the empty treasury? I asked. Xiao Chengyu lowered his head and said, I do not know. Then go find a way. Consult your ministers. Look up information. In short, you must solve this problem, as the emperor. You cannot only enjoy power without taking responsibility, I said. Xiao Chengyu remained silent for a moment, then said, Mother, I know I was wrong. I will go and find a way to solve the problem of the empty treasury. With that, he turned and left. Watching his retreating figure, I knew very well in my heart that this argument was an opportunity for his growth. Sure enough, in the following days, Xiao Chengyu was busy dealing with the issue of the depleted national treasury and never came to complain to me again. I knew that he had truly begun to shoulder the responsibilities of an emperor. A month later, Xiao Chengyu came running to me happily. Mother, I have come up with a solution to the problem of the depleted treasury, Xiao Chengyu said excitedly. Oh, what is it? I asked. I plan to reduce taxes and encourage the people to reclaim wasteland for farming. This way, the treasury will gradually be replenished, Xiao Chengyu said. I nodded and said, this is a good idea. It seems you've put in a lot of effort during this time. Xiao Chengyu smiled proudly and said, it's all thanks to Mother Empress's guidance. I finally understand now that as an emperor, I must take responsibility and can no longer rely on others. Very well, I am pleased that you understand this, I said. From then on, Xiao Chengyu became increasingly diligent, handling government affairs with growing ease and proficiency. As for me, I continued to live a leisurely life, spending my days planting flowers, drinking tea, and playing with birds. My days were quite delightful. Occasionally, Xiao Chengyu would come to chat with me, telling me about matters at court. I would just listen, never offering any opinions. I know, he has grown up and no longer needs me to worry about him. In the blink of an eye, several years passed, and Xiao Chengyu had become a competent emperor, governing the country with great order. One day, Xiao Chengyu suddenly came to see me. Mother Empress, your son wishes to appoint a crown prince, Xiao Chengyu said. I was somewhat surprised and said, so soon? How old are you? And you're already thinking about establishing a crown prince? Mother, your son has grown up and should consider matters of the next generation. Moreover, establishing a crown prince is also for the stability of the country, Xiao Chengyu said. I thought for a moment and said, very well, you decide for yourself, I support you. Xiao Chengyu was very pleased and said, thank you, Mother, I will definitely choose a suitable crown prince. Not long after, Xiao Chengyu announced the appointment of his eldest son as the crown prince. Watching Xiao Chengyu and the crown prince together, I felt a surge of emotions. In my past life, I had worried myself to death over this incompetent son, only to die from exhaustion in the end. In this life, I chose to slack off, but I never expected that it would actually help him grow into a good emperor. Perhaps, sometimes, letting go is also a form of love. From then on, I became even more carefree. Every day, aside from enjoying life, I would watch Xiao Chengyu and the crown prince handle state affairs. I knew my task was already complete. From now on, I would live well for myself. In this life, I am no longer the Empress Dowager who worked herself to death at her desk, but an old lady who enjoys life. I believe that the days ahead will only get better and better. The morning sunlight filtered through the carved window lattice, casting dappled shadows on the rosewood table. As I stirred the almond paste in my bowl with a silver spoon, I saw Li Shun leading a small figure hurrying in. It was Crown Prince Xiao Mingyuan, who had just turned 12, grandmother. Have you seen father today? The little one's forehead was beaded with fine sweat, the jade pendant at his waist swaying gently with each breath. I slowly swallowed a mouthful of yogurt and pointed to the embroidered stool beside me. Have some tea first. Look at you running like a little rabbit. Your father went to the imperial study early this morning. What do you need from him? Xiao Mingyuan, however, did not sit down, fidgeting with his sleeve. He said, "Your grandson was reading the essentials of governance from the Zhongguan era yesterday and came across a part one truly don't understand. I wished to ask grandmother for an explanation." Before he could finish, I was already leaning back with a teacup in hand, covering my mouth with a handkerchief as I coughed twice. Oh dear, I've been feeling dizzy these past few days. Perhaps I caught a chill while admiring the lotus flowers yesterday. Mingyuan, your father could recite that book by heart when he studied it. You should go ask him. Li Shun suppressed a laugh and handed over the candied kumquats. I took a bite, and the sweetness made me squint with delight. Xiao Mingyuan clearly anticipated my refusal and pulled a scroll from his sleeve. Your Majesty, please look at this policy essay I wrote about the equal field system. Policy essay. I suddenly raised my voice and called out to the room outside. Xiao Li, bring in my Persian cat. I heard it caught a butterfly today. The little one watched wide-eyed as the palace maid brought in the glossifered cat. I scooped the cat into my arms, my fingers teasing the coral collar around its neck. Mingyuan, look how soft the fur on this cat's paws is, smoother than the paper you scholars write on. Xiao Mingyuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but as a prince bound by strict rules, he had no choice but to bow and take his leave. Only when his figure disappeared around the corner of the corridor did I poke the cat's head and say, Yuanbao, tell me, shouldn't a royal grandmother pretend to be deaf and blind to be more endearing? The cat meowed and pawed at my sleeve, as if in agreement. At the third quarter of the hour of the sheep, the water lilies in the imperial garden were in full, lively bloom. I leaned against the curved railing of the nine-bend bridge, watching Li Shun use a bamboo pole to feed the koi fish. When suddenly I heard familiar footsteps approaching from behind. Mother, Mingyuan says you refused to teach him to read. Xiao Chengyu's voice carried a hint of helplessness. I slowly turned over, using a round fan to cover half of my face. Your Majesty, how can you say that? This old bones of mine, how could I compare to the erudite scholars of the Hanlin Academy? Besides, who was it back then who cried and insisted, Mother, don't bother with me? Xiao Chengyu choked for a moment and sat down beside me. Your son was immature back then, but Mingyuan is. After all, the Crown Prince. I suddenly sat up straight, pointing at the largest red carp in the pond. Look at that fish. If it's always fed with fish food by others, it'll eventually overeat and die. Back then, I personally taught you how to review memorials, and what happened? You wrote relief as vibrate, and it was Li Shun who quietly reminded you. Li Shun immediately lowered his head, pretending to focus on feeding the fish. Xiao Chengyu's face flushed red. And he muttered, but I've improved since then, haven't I? Improvement is your own doing. What does it have to do with me? I lay back down, deliberately yawning. If your Majesty has nothing else, I shall take my afternoon nap. I was up listening to opera until midnight yesterday. Xiao Chengyu clearly had no way with me. After a moment of silence, he suddenly said, if Mother is willing to teach Mingyuan, I will have the imperial kitchen prepare iced plum soup for you every day. With double the honey. My eyelids twitched slightly, the sweet and sour taste of plum soup swirling on the tip of my tongue. But then it occurred to me, if I agreed to this, wouldn't I be pestered by this pair of grandmother and grandson every single day from now on? Ahem, I cleared my throat. I've recently been studying the flower growing methods in *Chimene Yaroshu*. I've heard that watering peonies with milk makes them bloom especially brilliantly. If your majesty could fetch me 2 buckets of fresh milk, your servant will go and handle it at once. Xiao Chengyu's eyes lit up, thinking I had relented, and he rose to leave. I watched his retreating figure and shook my head, then beckoned to Li Shun with a finger. Go to the small kitchen and fetch the candied fruits I've hidden. Make sure the emperor doesn't find out. As autumn deepened, the rear palace suddenly grew lively. First, Consort Shu had chrysanthemums planted all over the courtyard of Changchun Palace. Then it was said that Consort Xian had sought out parrots from the common folk that could speak auspicious phrases. Even the usually low-key Consort De began frequently sending pastries to my palace. Your Majesty, this is the walnut pastry newly made by Consort De, specially prepared with crushed pine nuts from Yunnan, the palace maid said. Kneeling as she presented the gilded food box, I picked up a piece and took a bite, raising an eyebrow as I glanced at Li Shun. These people are suddenly so attentive. Could it be they think I'm about to regain the Empress's seal? Li Shun bowed and replied, this servant has heard that His Majesty has been frequently discussing the matter of appointing an empress with the ministers these days. The consorts are probably, oh, I perked up, wiping my hands. Let's go. We'll head to Changchun Palace to admire the chrysanthemums. Consort Shu clearly didn't expect my sudden arrival, nearly knocking over the teacup on the table in her fluster. I glanced at the courtyard full of golden chrysanthemums, my gaze settling on the most vibrant golden empress blooming under the corridor. These flowers are well cared for, though perhaps a bit too showy. Consort Shu's expression shifted slightly as she forced a smile. If your majesty the Empress Dowager likes them, this humble consort will have a few pots moved to your palace. No need, I waved my hand, pointing to the wild chrysanthemums in the corner. I find these unassuming little flowers more pleasing to the eye. They withstand wind and rain. Consort Shu understood the underlying message, her face turning pale as she lowered her head in agreement. As we left the Changchun Palace, Li Shun whispered softly, the ladies should quiet down now. Quiet down, I chuckled lightly. If they could truly quiet down, this harem wouldn't be the harem it is. But I pinched the pearl tassel on my sleeve. I'll just sit back and enjoy the show. As dusk fell, I lay on the soft couch in the warm chamber, listening to the wind outside the window, and suddenly recalled the nights I had stayed up late in the imperial study in my past life. Back then, I always felt there were endless worries, but now I understand that true freedom comes from letting go of certain things. Li Shun, I called out, bring that jar of sour plum soup and 2 plates of melon seeds. Let's go listen to the night opera. At your service. Li Shun's voice carried a hint of laughter, as if he had long expected me to say this. The moonlight filtered through the window screen, and as I nibbled on a sour plum, I listened to the faint sound of silk and bamboo instruments drifting from afar. This is the life, so comfortable, in the warm chamber of the winter solstice family banquet. The gilded charcoal fire was burning brightly, holding the silver wine pot. I poured wine into the cup, watching helplessly as Xiao Chengyu shot me a glance for the 6th time. He probably wanted me, the Empress Dowager, to say a few polite words, but I deliberately played dumb. Here, Mingyuan. I placed a piece of venison into the crown prince's bowl. When your father saw this dish back in the day, he could eat 3 bowls in a row, only to end up with indigestion and a fever. Fussing about wanting his mother to rub his belly, grandmother, Xiao Mingyuan's ears instantly flushed red, and he nearly dropped his chopsticks. Xiao Chengyu coughed so violently it shook the heavens, while Consort Shu covered her mouth to stifle a laugh. Consort Xian's parrot suddenly screeched at the top of its lungs. The emperor wants to rub his belly. The entire room was stunned. I struggled to suppress my laughter and tossed a hazelnut into the parrot's cage. Good bird. I'll have Li Shun get you a golden bell later. Xiao Chengyu finally caught his breath and said with a stern face, Mother Empress, today is the grand winter solstice festival. Don't you think you should say a few words? I suddenly raised my voice, holding up my wine cup as I stood. This grieving one has something to say. Your Majesty, do you still remember that year when you were 12? Sneaking imperial wine and getting so drunk you passed out in the peony bushes of the imperial garden. Mother Empress, Xiao Chengyu's face flushed a deep purplish red, his ears turning crimson all the way to the tips. The concubines below desperately held back their laughter, their shoulders trembling like leaves in the autumn wind. I swirled my wine glass and continued, and also, on the day Mingyuan was born, your father held the child and cried so hard he could barely catch his breath, saying, such a tiny little thing, how will we ever keep him alive? And look at him now, already able to read Zhengguan Zhengyao. Grandmother. Xiao Mingyuan's face flushed bright red, wishing he could crawl under the table. All right. I won't say any more. I waved my hand dismissively, then suddenly staggered. Oh my, this wine is so strong. Li Shun swiftly reached out to steady me. And I took the opportunity to slump onto the soft couch, mumbling, you all keep eating, I'll just rest my eyes for a bit. Xiao Chengyu looked at me helplessly, sighed, and said, forget it, since mother is tired, let her rest first. Today's family banquet, let everyone enjoy themselves to the fullest. I closed my eyes, listening as the banquet grew lively again, and secretly curled the corners of my mouth into a smile. Not long after, I heard Xiao Mingyuan whisper quietly, Father. Is grandmother pretending to be drunk? Don't talk nonsense. Xiao Chengyu's voice carried a hint of helplessness. Your grandmother. This is a rare moment of feigned ignorance. I nearly laughed out loud and quickly covered my mouth with a handkerchief. The trick of pretending to be drunk was something I learned from an old eunuch in the palace back when the late emperor was still alive. The Empress Dowager often used this trick to avoid unwanted attention. Now that it was my turn to use it, it worked like a charm. In my dazed state, I felt someone cover me with a blanket and tuck a hand warmer into my palm. I didn't need to look to know it was Li Shun. This child, who has followed me for so many years, understands my thoughts the best. Your Majesty the Empress Dowager, would you like a sip of sobering soup? Li Shun's voice was low, carrying a hint of amusement. I slightly opened my eyes and saw that everyone at the banquet was chatting animatedly, so I whispered, add more honey to the soup, I want it sweet. Li Shun held back a laugh and retreated, holding the warming brazier. Listening to the sound of wind and snow outside the window, I suddenly felt that this life of slacking off was becoming more and more interesting. After midnight, the banquet finally came to an end. Rubbing my sore back as I sat up, I saw Xiao Mingyuan walking in with a scroll of books in his arms, looking dejected and dispirited. What's wrong? Did your father scold you? I added a piece of fragrant charcoal to the brazier, and warmth immediately washed over my face. Xiao Mingyuan sat down beside me and said gloomily, Father said that grandmother's mischief at the banquet today was to make me understand that the Emperor's family affairs are also state affairs. But how come I feel like grandmother just wanted to slack off? I burst out laughing and pinched his cheek. You clever little thing, you saw right through me. But your father is also correct, this palace is full of lessons everywhere. Just look at today's banquet, the way Consort Shu presented the tea, the order in which Consort Xian served the dishes. Aren't these all rules? Xiao Mingyuan nodded, seeming to understand but not quite, then suddenly pointed at the rattle drum in my hand. Grandmother, why do you always play with this? Isn't this a child's toy? Because it's fun. I shook the rattle drum, and the brass bells chimed crisply. When I was the crown princess, I spent all day holding their admonitions for women and instructions for women, not even daring to laugh too loudly. Later, when I became Empress and then Empress Dowager, even taking a breath had to be done with rules in mind. Now it's better, I can play when I want, make a fuss when I want. This is what life should be. Xiao Mingyuan was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, your subject seems to understand a little why grandmother is slacking off. It's not that you're truly neglecting things, but you want father and me to learn to take responsibility ourselves. I raised an eyebrow and looked at him. This child is much cleverer than his father was at his age. Good that you understand, I said, handing the rattle to him. Go play now, you have studies tomorrow. Remember, you should study what needs to be studied, but you should also play when it's time to play. Don't be like your father was back then, acting like a little old man. Xiao Mingyuan ran out laughing, the rattle in his hand clattering dong dong as he went. Li Shun came in carrying the hangover soup, shaking his head as he watched the prince's retreating figure. His Highness the Crown Prince takes after you, Your Majesty. He's nothing like the Emperor was as a child. Following my way is good. I took a sip of the soup. In this lifetime, one must have some joys. If you're always tense, how exhausting it is. The snow outside the window fell heavier and heavier. Gazing at the flickering candle flame, I suddenly remembered my past self, coughing up blood in the imperial study. Back then, I never could have imagined that one day I would be lying in a warm chamber, teasing my grandson, playing with a rattle drum, living such a carefree and comfortable life. Li Shun, I yawned, draw the curtains. This old one is going to sleep. Tomorrow, have someone make some candied chestnuts and send them to Mingyuan. Understood, Li Shun responded softly, and the room gradually fell silent. I closed my eyes, listening to the crackling of the charcoal fire, a slow smile spreading across my lips. At the first temple fair after the start of spring, I sat in the soft sedan chair and lifted a corner of the curtain. Just in time to see a monkey show on the street. The monkey, dressed in red and green, walked steadily on stilts, far better than those little eunuchs in the palace who couldn't even stand properly. Li Shun, I tapped the sedan pole, go and invite that monkey performer. I, the Empress Dowager, wish to learn some acrobatics. Li Shun nearly choked on his own saliva. Your Majesty the Empress Dowager, this is most improper. Improper? I raised an eyebrow. I used to review memorials and pass judgments in court back in the day. What's wrong with learning a little street performance now? Hurry up, don't let that monkey get away. 3 days later. The Imperial Garden was as lively as a marketplace. Master Zhong, the monkey trainer, set up his stage by the rockery with his apprentice and the monkey named Golden Eyes. I sat under the wisteria trellis, watching Li Shun in his short-sleeved outfit clumsily juggling 3 colored balls, and couldn't help but laugh until tears welled up in my eyes. Li Shun, this isn't juggling, it's more like a circus act. Tossing the ball right up into the tree, everyone burst into laughter. And Li Shun's face flushed red as he craned his neck to reach for the colored ball stuck on the branch. Suddenly, Jin Jing darted up the tree, snatched the ball, and perched on a branch to gnaw on it. Turns out the ball was hollow and stuffed with peanuts. Ouch, I laughed, slapping my thigh. This monkey is much cleverer than you. Master Zhong, quickly teach me how to make it understand human speech. Master Zhong hurriedly replied, Your Majesty flatters this humble servant. Golden Eyes is very intelligent, just give it some peanuts. Li Shun, go fetch 3 catties of peanuts, the sugar-coated ones. I stood up excitedly. I want to learn to walk the tightrope. Let's use that clothesline rope. Your Majesty, you mustn't. Li Shun cried out in alarm, dropping to his knees with a thud. How could that rope bear your precious body? If anything were to happen, what could possibly go wrong? I waved my hand, instructing someone to bring 2 tables and tie the clothesline between them. Back in the day, I wore a 12-pound phoenix crown and ceremonial robes, and I still walked steadily, didn't I? No sooner had the words left my mouth than I stepped onto the rope, only to see Jin Jing dart over and circle around my feet. In a panic, I lost my balance and tumbled straight into the pond beside me. Your Majesty, everyone exclaimed as they rushed over. I wiped the water from my face, looked at Jin Jing hopping back and forth on the rope, and suddenly burst into laughter. Master Zhong, I said, climbing ashore dripping wet and pointing at the monkey, I've come to understand this acrobatics lesson. Some things should be done just like this monkey. Following your heart and desires, without always putting on airs. Li Shun handed over a cloak with a bitter smile, when suddenly an announcement came from afar, the Emperor has arrived. Xiao Chengyu looked at my drenched appearance, his face ashen. What is the Empress Dowager doing? What if you catch a cold? I sat down on a chair, cracking open a peanut handed to me by Jin Jing. Your Majesty, look, even this monkey can walk the tightrope, so why can't I learn? Besides, I'm happy. Look at this pond water, it's much clearer than the ink in the imperial study. Xiao Chengyu sighed helplessly, then suddenly caught sight of the colorful balls in the tree. Raising an eyebrow, he said, if the Empress Dowager enjoys juggling, why not have the scholars of the Hanlin Academy learn it too? In the future, they could juggle while presenting matters at the morning court. That would be quite amusing. I nearly choked on a peanut and pointed at him, laughing and scolding. You child, you're becoming more and more outrageous. Jin Jing suddenly leaped onto Xiao Chengyu's shoulder, tugging at his dragon robe and pulling him toward the rope. Everyone held their breath, only to see Xiao Chengyu actually step onto the rope, spread his arms, take 2 steps, and then jump down. The Queen Mother is right, he said, brushing the dust off his hands. Some things, you only find out how fun they are after you try. I looked at the smile in his eyes and suddenly remembered how he used to stay up late in the imperial study in our past life. Now, he has finally learned to find moments of ease amidst the heavy burden of state affairs. Perhaps this is the highest form of slacking off. After the juggling incident, Xiao Chengyu suddenly announced that he would be selecting consorts. I lay on the chaise lounge cracking sunflower seeds, listening to Li Shun read out the list of potential consorts sent by the Ministry of Revenue, when a sudden whim struck me. Let me have a look. I took the list and skimmed it. Daughters of wealthy families in the capital, sisters of military generals, oh, and one who tames eagles. Interesting. Li Shun smiled apologetically. His Majesty said he would like to invite Your Majesty the Empress Dowager to preside over the initial selection and help him screen the candidates. I raised an eyebrow. He sure knows how to slack off. Very well, I'll go take a look at these young ladies, but let me be clear, I don't care about virtue or grace, I only pick the interesting ones. The selection day was exceptionally lively in the audition hall. I nibbled on candied fruit, watching the first candidate enter with small, delicate steps, performing the ritual bow with perfect propriety. "What is your name?" I asked lazily. "This humble girl is of the Liu family. My father is—" "Stop," I waved my hand. "What talent do you have?" Lady Liu was taken aback and whispered, "I am skilled in needlework and can embroider twin lotus flowers." "Too dull," I yawned. Next, when the second candidate entered, she was actually holding a calico cat in her arms. My eyes lit up. "This cat has lovely fur. What's its name?" Replying to Her Majesty the Empress Dowager, "It's called Snowball, and it can roll over." Before the court lady finished speaking, Snowball suddenly leaped out of her arms and dashed straight toward the fruit platter in front of me. "Excellent," I laughed and tossed it a grape. "You're the one. Go to the Changchun Palace." Xiao Chengyu coughed incessantly beside me, clearly not expecting me to make such a choice. The court ladies that followed were even more diverse. There was the daughter of a military officer who could split a bamboo pole as thick as a bowl with her bare hands, the daughter of a storyteller who could recite the romance of the Western Chamber backwards, and a girl who had traveled north and south with her father and could paint local customs. "Your Majesty," Xiao Qingyu finally couldn't help but speak up, "this selection of imperial consorts should still prioritize virtue." "Virtue?" I raised an eyebrow and pointed at the candidate who was taming the eagle. "She can make a goshawk circle before the throne without harming anyone. Isn't that virtue? Besides, aren't there already plenty of virtuous, kind, and gentle women in the Emperor's harem? Wouldn't it be nice to have someone interesting for a change?" Xiao Chengyu was left speechless, watching helplessly as I kept all the candidates who could tame eagles, tell stories, and paint skillfully. When the last candidate entered, she was actually carrying a hoe on her shoulder. "I am Chen, a farmer's daughter," she said with a confident curtsy. "I heard the palace is in need of vegetable growers, so I came to apply." I burst into laughter, slapping the table and exclaiming, "Excellent! For your honesty alone, I approve. Assign her to the imperial garden, specifically to tend the peony beds." After the selection ended, Xiao Qingyu said with a grimace, "Mother, are you choosing imperial consorts or recruiting a circus troupe?" "Your Majesty doesn't understand," I said leisurely, rising to my feet. "The imperial harem is like a grand garden. How can it thrive with only peonies and peonies? It needs some crabgrass and wild chrysanthemums to liven things up." Li Shun, stifling a laugh nearby, suddenly pointed into the distance and said, "Your Majesty the Empress Dowager, look. The falconer girl is teasing Golden Eye." Following his gaze, I saw Golden Eye perched on the falconer girl's shoulder, a piece of dried meat clutched in its talons. The girl laughed heartily. And even the goshawk beside her seemed unusually tame. "Look," I said to Xiao Chengyu, "when interesting people come together, even the air feels more alive. Slacking off doesn't mean doing nothing, it means letting the right people take charge and the right ones enjoy themselves." "Your Majesty, just wait and see what interesting things these girls will stir up." Xiao Chengyu shook his head helplessly but couldn't help smiling. "As long as mother is happy," gazing at the clear spring sky. It suddenly struck me that this slacker life was like the kite soaring above, seemingly free and unrestrained, yet carried by a gentle breeze that lifts them high and far. On the day of the spring equinox, I was lying under the corridor weaving a flower crown for Jinjing when I heard a fluttering sound overhead. Looking up, I saw a goshawk sweep across like a dark cloud, a small bright yellow scroll dangling from its talons. "Isn't this Lin Xiaowan's eagle, the falconer?" Li Shun exclaimed in surprise. The goshawk landed precisely on my knee, lightly lifting its claws, and the scroll dropped beside my embroidered shoes. Jinjing curiously moved closer, only to be swatted away by the goshawk's wing, making me laugh out loud. Unrolling the scroll, I saw crooked handwriting. "Your Majesty the Empress Dowager, this humble girl has started a tea party behind the rockery in the imperial garden, with melon seeds and newly composed stories. Please come and listen." Lin Xiaowan kowtows in respect. "Interesting," I said, shaking the scroll in my hand. "Go tell little Li to change into something more comfortable. I, the Empress Dowager, wish to go listen to storytelling." The imperial garden was indeed bustling with activity. Lin Xiaowan leaned against the rockery, holding a folding fan as she narrated Mu Guiying takes command. A circle of palace maids and eunuchs surrounded her, and even consort Shu was hiding behind a tree with her maid, eavesdropping. Upon seeing my arrival, everyone hurried to bow in greeting, but Lin Xiaowan, unperturbed, boldly brought over an embroidered stool. "Your Majesty, please take a seat. The next part is about Mu Guiying breaking through the heavenly gate formation." I had just sat down when a dusty pigeon fluttered over and landed on Lin Xiaowan's shoulder. She untied a note from the pigeon's leg, and after reading it, raised an eyebrow, saying, "Oh, it's from General Zhao of the Shaogi Battalion. He says my eagle snatched his quiver of arrows yesterday." Everyone burst into laughter, but suddenly, a scolding voice was heard from afar. "What kind of behavior is this? How can such mischief be tolerated within the imperial harem?" Following the voice, they saw it was none other than Imperial Censor Wang. Stroking his beard and glaring in anger, he was followed by several senior ministers, all with expressions of deep distress and anguish. "Your Majesty the Empress Dowager." Minister Wang performed a grand bow. "We have heard that recently, there are women in the rear palace taming eagles, storytelling, and even allowing birds of prey to fly freely within the palace. This is not in accordance with the rights and regulations. We implore your Majesty to enforce strict control." I leisurely cracked melon seeds and asked, "Minister Wang, how do you find the taming of eagles to be against the rights?" "Your Majesty," Minister Wang declared with righteous solemnity, "women should adhere to the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. Being gentle, quiet, and virtuous is their proper duty. Such behavior, showing themselves in public, wielding weapons and engaging in martial arts, what kind of propriety is that?" "Oh," I raised an eyebrow and pointed at Lin Xiaoan. "Then tell me, has the hawk she tamed ever hurt anyone? Damaged anything?" "Well, no, it hasn't." "Then that settles it." I waved my hand dismissively. "No one's been hurt. Nothing's been damaged, it's just a bit of fun. Back in the day, Empress who could ride horses and shoot arrows." "What, do you expect me to lock these girls indoors all day, embroidering flowers and birds?" Minister Wang choked, his face flushing red. At this moment, Xiao Chengyu's voice came from behind the rockery. "Minister Wang, I believe that Lin Xiaoan's eagle could help the imperial cavalry find their quivers, and perhaps even deliver military messages. It might prove useful in times of war." The old ministers exchanged uneasy glances, and Lin Xiaoan seized the opportunity to add, "Exactly, my swift wind is incredibly clever. It knows the way and can carry letters, faster than even the fastest courier." Xiao Chengyu nodded with a smile and turned to Minister Wang. "Rest assured, I will ensure they exercise proper judgment. As for etiquette," he glanced at me, "etiquette is rigid, but people are flexible, as long as we do not overstep. A little flexibility now and then is acceptable." Lord Wang had no choice but to bow and withdraw. Once the old ministers had gone, I raised an eyebrow at Xiao Chengyu. "Your Majesty's words were truly clever. It seems you've truly mastered the art of slacking off. Your praise is too kind, Mother Empress." Xiao Chengyu said with a bitter smile, "I simply thought it might be good to liven up the harem a little, and besides," he lowered his voice, "Lin Xiaoan's jokes really are well told. Far more amusing than the pedantic writings of the Hanlin Academy." I burst out laughing, then caught sight of Jinjing pawing at the eagle's claws and quickly said, "Li Shun, hurry and take that greedy cat away before it snatches Jifeng's jerky." Lin Xiaoan smiled and handed over a plate of jerky, and the eagle immediately released its claws, tilting its head to look at Jinjing. The 2 little creatures sniffed each other. Slowly inching closer together, it seems even the animals in this laid-back harem have grown carefree. After the grain rain, the peonies in the imperial garden were in full bloom. I crouched before the flower bed, watching Lady Chen fertilize the peonies with chicken manure, when I suddenly recalled the bustling market I had seen in my previous life among the common folk vendors selling rouge, street performers, snack sellers. It was lively indeed. "Li Shun," I wiped the dirt from my hands. "Go inform the ladies of the palace that tomorrow we will hold a market by the Tay Pond. Each of them is to bring 3 items to sell, and the silver earned will be donated to the elderly matrons in the cold palace." Li Shun was dumbfounded. "Your Majesty, this is hardly the proper way for the imperial consorts to behave, setting up stalls like common vendors." "Proper way?" I raised an eyebrow. "I am the proper way. Go quickly and do as I say, and don't keep me waiting." The next day, the banks of the Tay Pond were bustling with excitement, as lively as a boiling pot. Noble consort Shu set up an embroidery frame to sell scented sachets. Virtuous consort's parrot stood on the stall shouting, "Buy one, get one free." Lin Xiaoan set up a falconry performance area. And even virtuous consort De brought her own brewed plum wine, calling out, "Personally tasted by the Empress Dowager." I sat in the main seat, watching Crown Prince Xiao Mingyuan run over with a bamboo basket, which surprisingly contained small wooden lions he had carved himself. "Imperial Grandmother." The little one's eyes sparkled. "Your subjects' wooden carvings sold for 5 taels of silver. Not bad." I pinched his cheek. "Much better than your father was at 12 back then. He only knew how to trade my jade thumb ring for sugar figurines." Xiao Chengyu happened to pass by and coughed at the remark. Mother, I was young back then, Your Majesty, come quickly, Lin Xiaoan suddenly called out. Swiftwind is holding silver in its beak. Everyone looked over and saw the goshawk, with a string of copper coins clutched in its talons, dropping them into Lin Xiaoan's money box. It turned out that a young eunuch wanted to buy on credit, but Jifeng refused to allow it, insisting on holding onto his silver before letting go. So impressive, Xiao Mingyuan exclaimed. Imperial Grandmother, may I have Jifeng deliver letters for me? As you wish, I said with a smile, taking a sip of plum wine, when I suddenly noticed Minister Wang hurrying over with several senior officials. Your Majesty, Your Highness. Minister Wang looked utterly shocked. What is the meaning of this? How could the imperial consorts be selling goods on the streets, if this gets out? How will the people of Great Qi view the royal family? Before Xiao Chengyu could speak, Lady Chen suddenly came over holding a radish larger than a head. Would you like to try it, sir? I grew it using a new method, crisp and sweet. Lord Wang was taken aback, instinctively took the radish and took a bite, his eyes lighting up. It really is quite good. Then let's buy it, I said with a smile. 10 taels of silver. And all the money will go to making clothes for the elderly in the cold palace. Lord Wang is so kind-hearted, surely you won't refuse, right? Lord Wang's face flushed red, and he had no choice but to take out the silver to buy the radish. The other senior ministers, seeing this, also took out their money. Some bought the virtuous consort's parrot, some purchased the virtuous consort's plum wine, and even the most rigid minister of rights bought Xiao Mingyuan's wood carving. See that? I whispered to Xiao Chengyu. The old ministers talk about rules, but deep down, they enjoy the liveliness too. Slacking off isn't about neglecting things, it's about steering things in a positive direction in a way they can accept. Xiao Chengyu nodded thoughtfully, then suddenly pointed at Lin Xiaoan's stall. Mother, look, Jifeng is flying with silver coins in its beak again. This time, it's the Minister of Revenue's purse. Everyone burst into laughter. As I gazed at the bustling market amid the swirling willow catkins, it suddenly struck me that this life of slacking off was like the waters of the Tay Pond on the surface, shimmering and seemingly carefree, but beneath, teeming with endless vitality and countless possibilities. Li Shun, I shook the empty wine glass. Go fetch a pot of wine. I want to take a good look and see how many interesting flowers can bloom in the harem this spring. The first heavy rain after the start of summer arrived without warning. Holding Jin Jing in my arms, I sat in the warm chamber, listening to the rain pattering noisily on the glazed tiles. Suddenly, I remembered how in my past life, whenever there was a heavy rain, I would always go to the imperial study to accompany Xiao Chengyu as he reviewed memorials, afraid that he might miss any reports about flood disasters. But now I stroked the soft fur on Jin Jing's back and said with a laugh, Yuan Bao. What do you think? Should we listen to the rain while drinking tea, or eavesdrop on the little eunuchs whispering in the corners? Jin Jing meowed, pawing at my sleeve, then suddenly pricked up her ears and turned to look out the window. At the same time, exclamations rose and fell in the distance. The cold palace is haunted. The storeroom is on fire. Look, I said leisurely, taking a sip of tea. The excitement has arrived. Li Shun hurried in. Your Majesty, the Empress Dowager. The Emperor and the Crown Prince have gone to the cold palace, saying they heard crying inside. The imperial kitchen also reported that the flour sacks in the storeroom have burst, leaving a white, powdery mess that looks like smoke billowing. Oh, I raised an eyebrow. Then go tell the Emperor to hold off on arresting anyone and have a warm cup of tea first. In this heavy rain, even ghosts would need an umbrella. Li Shun suppressed a laugh and withdrew, holding Jin Jing. I walked to the window and saw figures holding lanterns rushing back and forth in the rain, their silhouettes faint and blurred, as if in a shadow puppet play. Not long after, Xiao Mingyuan ran in, drenched from head to toe. Grand Empress Dowager. The little one's hair was dripping with water. The crying in the cold palace was... It was a newly arrived palace maid crying because she missed home. The fire in the storeroom was just flour sacks torn open by rats. The imperial kitchen staff mistook it for smoke. I wiped his face with a handkerchief. So what? Xiao Mingyuan scratched his head. So Father Emperor had the little palace maid sent to the laundry bureau to learn the rules first, and had cats kept in the storeroom to catch mice. But Father Emperor is still very angry, saying that the people below are unreliable. What's the use of being angry? I pointed to the chessboard on the table. Come, play a game of chess with me. Look at this chessboard. Each piece has its own position. If the order is disrupted, mistakes are bound to happen. As a master, one must learn to let those below find their own positions, rather than relying on the master to oversee everything. Xiao Mingyuan nodded, only half understanding. Just as he placed a piece, Xiao Chengyu walked in with a dark expression. "Mother," he said. Water still dripping from his clothes. "You knew it was all a farce from the start, so why didn't you say so earlier? If I had told you earlier, how would you have learned to figure it out on your own?" I pointed to the chessboard. "Come, finish this game with me." Look at this besiege Wei to rescue Zhao move. Sometimes, appearing to do nothing actually leaves the other side enough room to make mistakes, so they'll remember the lesson. Xiao Chengyu fell silent for a moment, then sat down and picked up a black piece. As he placed the piece, he suddenly said, "Only today have I come to understand, Mother, that your laziness isn't laziness at all, but a kind of wisdom." "Oh, is your Majesty praising me?" I said with a laugh as I captured one of his pieces. "What wisdom is there in slacking off? It's just that I've seen through it. The people in this palace are like the pieces on this board. The tighter you try to grip them, the more likely you are to lose them. It's better to loosen your hold and let them stir up trouble on their own. Once they've made a mess of things, they'll understand naturally." As soon as the words left my mouth, I saw Li Shun enter with a young eunuch in tow. The eunuch was trembling all over, clutching a plump calico cat in his arms. "Reporting to Your Majesty the Empress Dowager," Li Shun said. "This is Xiao Zhuzi from the Imperial Kitchen. He says the mice in the storeroom were scared off by this cat." I looked at the cat, which was licking its paws, and suddenly remembered what Lady Chen had said in the garden earlier that day. Cats have their own ways, mice have their own paths, people shouldn't always try to decide things for them. Reward him with 10 taels of silver. I pointed at the cat. "And keep this cat in the storeroom, remember, from now on. Let the cat manage the storeroom affairs, people should interfere less." Xiao Zhuzi was overjoyed and left after expressing his gratitude. Xiao Changyu watched his retreating figure and suddenly smiled. "Your Majesty's move of using a cat to catch mice is far more effective than the imperial decree I issued." Of course, I shook the white piece in my hand. "I, the Empress Dowager, only focus on playing my own game. It's your turn to make a move in this match." The rain outside the window gradually subsided, the black and white pieces on the chessboard interweaving in an amusing pattern. Under the candlelight, Xiao Chengyu slightly furrowed his brows. I regretted it the moment the autumn hunting procession left the capital. The carriage jolted so violently, it was even more unsteady than the swing in the imperial garden. Holding Jinjing close against the soft cushion, I listened to Xiao Mingyuan's cheers outside the carriage and couldn't help but lift the curtain to glare at him. "You little rascal. If you keep shaking it like this old lady's teacup is going to end up on your head." Xiao Mingyuan stuck out his tongue and urged his horse closer. "Your Majesty, look, the hunting ground is just ahead. Father said he intends to hunt a deer today to make you some antler soup." "What kind of soup doesn't matter," I yawned. "Just make sure the cook adds plenty of ginger slices. I can't stand the fishy smell." The autumn grass in the hunting grounds had turned yellow, and the wind carried the fresh scent of pine resin. I had a tent set up halfway up the mountain, furnished with tables, chairs, and tea sets. Watching Xiao Changyu and his ministers gallop into the forest from afar, I suddenly felt the scene resembled pieces on a chessboard. The emperor was the general, the ministers were his advisors, and I was just an idler, cracking melon seeds. "Your Majesty, Miss Lin Xiaoan requests an audience." Li Shun lifted the tent flap. Lin Xiaoan led Jifeng inside, followed by a young palace maid carrying a wild rabbit bound tightly with ropes. "What is the meaning of this?" I raised an eyebrow. Lin Xiaoan smiled as she untied the ropes from the rabbit. "I spotted it in the woods and thought since Your Majesty enjoys fluffy creatures, I'd catch it for your amusement." Golden eyes immediately jumped out of my arms and began circling the rabbit. Perhaps frightened out of its wits, the rabbit remained motionless, allowing the cat to sniff it. I suddenly recalled the folk tale waiting for a hare by the tree stump and couldn't help but laugh. "Rare to see you so filial, but I prefer live prey. Go on, release it and let Golden Eyes chase it for fun." Lin Xiaoan was taken aback for a moment, then smiled and did as told. Golden Eyes let out a meow and gave chase. And only then did the rabbit snap back to reality, dashing off into the woods. The figures of one person, one cat, and one rabbit quickly disappeared into the grass. I picked up my teacup and suddenly caught a glimpse of a bright yellow figure in the distance. It was Xiao Changyu's dragon robe. "Li Shun." I pointed to the large rock by the forest. "Move my recliner over there. I want to see if the emperor can hunt that deer." As soon as I lay down on the rock, I saw Xiao Changyu charging out on horseback, followed by several ministers panting heavily. Grass stains were smeared on his face, but his hands were empty. "Mother," he said with a pained expression as he dismounted, "that deer ran too fast. I chased it for half an hour and didn't even catch a glimpse of its shadow. Oh, I shook the candied fruit in my hand. This grieving mother actually knows where the deer is. Xiao Chengyu's eyes lit up. Mother, tell me quickly. I pointed at Jin Jing, who was rolling around in the grass. Clutched in its paws were a few brownish-yellow deer hairs. Xiao Chengyu was stunned for a moment. Then suddenly burst into laughter. So mother's cat is faster than my arrows. The ministers exchanged glances, and suddenly someone shouted, Your Majesty, look, a deer. Everyone looked over and saw a stag slowly emerging from the forest, heading straight toward my lounge chair. Xiao Chengyu instinctively reached for his arrow, but I raised my hand to stop him. Why panic? It's not a tiger. The stag stopped 3 steps away from me. Lowering its head to sniff the wild chrysanthemums by my feet, Golden Eyes seized the chance to leap onto its back, pawing at its antlers. The sight of a person, a cat, and a deer coexisting so harmoniously resembled a painting, prompting the ministers to lower their bows and arrows. This deer must be a spirit. I chuckled, tossing it a candied fruit. Look how gentle it is, more courteous than the scholars at the Hanlin Academy. Xiao Chengyu shook his head with a wry smile. Is your Majesty praising it or mocking it? Of course it's praise. I pointed at the stag. Look, it doesn't harm people or damage things. And it even amuses me, much more endearing than those ministers who only know how to submit memorials. The ministers lowered their heads, pretending to cough. Lin Xiaowan suddenly rode over on her horse, the wind fluttering at her shoulders like wings. Your Majesty, would you like to see whose is faster, my eagle or your cat? Very well, I said, growing excited, and pointed at a distant old locust tree. Let's see who can fetch the red silk ribbon from that tree first. Golden Eyes. Did you hear that? If you win, you'll get dried fish snacks. Golden Eyes meowed and darted up the tree in a flash. Swift Wind took flight almost at the same moment. Their 2 figures crisscrossed among the locust tree branches, a dizzying sight to behold, in the end, as Golden Eyes leaped down with the red silk ribbon in his mouth. Swift Wind had only just managed to grab the very end of it. What a cat! I laughed heartily, picking up Golden Eyes and giving him a kiss. Li Shun, reward him with 3 pounds of dried fish, freshly grilled. Xiao Chengyu looked at the jubilant crowd and suddenly remarked with emotion, Mother Empress always knows how to turn life into poetry. Poetry? I raised an eyebrow. I've simply come to understand, this kingdom is yours. This hunting ground is yours. As for me, I only need to be a spectator of the scenery. An autumn breeze swept by, and the stag suddenly let out a long cry before turning and leaping into the forest. Jin Jing licked the red silk ribbon on its paw, while Lin Xiaowan's parrot began to shout again. Jin Jing wins. In the distance, the sound of hunting drums gradually rose, startling a flock of wild geese flying south. I gazed at the sunset clouds filling the sky and suddenly felt that this carefree autumn hunt was 1,000 times more interesting than those solemn imperial expeditions of my past life. On the day before the winter solstice, a wandering old nun suddenly arrived at the palace, saying she had taken shelter from the snow in a dilapidated temple at the foot of the mountain and was brought into the palace by Li Shun. Looking at her coarse monastic robe, I suddenly recalled the Chengxintang paper I had used for copying scriptures in my past life, 100 times finer than this fabric. Does the lady benefactor have something on her mind? The old nun asked, pressing her palms together. I smiled and pointed at the snowscape outside the window. Look at this snow. Reverend Mother, it falls on the glazed tiles as snow, and on the muddy ground as snow too. What worries could I possibly have? The old nun was taken aback for a moment, then laughed. It is rare indeed for a benefactor to see through the form so clearly. Just as we were speaking, Xiao Mingyuan rushed in, snowflakes still clinging to his hair. Grandmother, I've built a snowman that looks just like you holding Jinjing. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, is it really that plump? The little one stuck out her tongue and suddenly caught sight of the old nun, quickly bowing in greeting. So it's Abbess Jinghui. I once saw your Dharma name in my father's Buddhist scriptures. I heard you can travel 100 miles in a day and even split firewood barehanded. The old nun smiled and nodded, but I became intrigued. Since the abbess can split firewood, why not help me chop some pine branches for the fire? My warm chamber is short on firewood. Xiao Mingyuan was dumbfounded, but the old nun pressed her palms together and said, Amitabha, since the benefactor has a request, this humble nun shall gladly oblige. Half an hour later, as I looked at the neatly stacked pine branches in the courtyard and then at the sturdy arms revealed by the old nun's rolled-up sleeves, I suddenly laughed and said, Abbess, you're no nun, you're clearly a female warrior. The old nun smiled and said, though I have taken monastic vows, I have not forgotten my roots in my youth. I made a living by chopping firewood in the countryside. Look at this pine branch, esteemed patron. It may seem coarse and clumsy, but it burns the warmest. Suddenly, I remembered something and had someone fetch ink and brush. I swiftly wrote the characters, Balan, on a sheet of chien paper and handed it to the old nun. Do you understand these two characters, Reverend? The old nun studied them for a moment and smiled. I may not understand, but I understand, Fengxia. Letting go, though your brushstrokes are wild, esteemed patron, they conceal a sense of freedom. Just as we were speaking, Xiao Chengyu entered carrying a stack of memorials. Seeing the old nun, he paused in surprise, then bowed in greeting. Reverend, I hope you are well. The elderly nun clasped her hands in return, then turned to me and said, I have disturbed you for too long and must take my leave. Remember, benefactor, letting go is not giving up, it is growing in another way. I watched the elderly nun tread away through the snow, then suddenly pointed at the memorial in Xiao Chengyu's hand. How many memorials has your majesty reviewed today? Replying to the Empress Dowager, Xiao Chengyu said with a bitter smile, there are disaster relief memorials from the Ministry of Revenue, ceremonial memorials from the Ministry of Rights, and, stop, I waved my hand. This dowager does not wish to hear such things. Look at these pine branches. When burning them for firewood, you must do it one by one. You cannot rush. The memorials are the same. When you grow tired of reviewing them, rest for a while. Do not follow in the footsteps of this dowager in her past life, exhausting herself until she turned to pine ash. Xiao Chengyu remained silent for a moment, then suddenly placed the memorial on the table, picked up the fire tongs to stir the charcoal brazier. I will listen to you, mother. I won't review any more today. I'll keep you company by the fire, drink tea, and chat. I nodded in satisfaction, tossing a piece of honey-preserved orange peel into the brazier. Instantly, the room was filled with a refreshing fragrance. Jin Jing leaped onto Xiao Chengyu's lap. He instinctively reached out to stroke her, his expression as gentle as a child's. Outside the window, the snow fell heavier and heavier, the frost patterns on the paper gradually taking on various shapes. I gazed at the dancing flames in the hearth and suddenly understood what the old nun meant by letting go. It wasn't about truly abandoning everything, but rather being like these flames. Radiating heat when hot, warming the heart when gentle, blazing when it should, and resting when it must. Li Shun, I yawned, fetch my fox-fur robe. I wish to see the snowman Mingyuan built. If it truly resembles me, it must wear a phoenix crown. As you wish, Li Shun replied with a smile. The charcoal fire in the room crackled, startling a sparrow on the beam, which fluttered toward the window filled with the glow of snow. The winter snow this year was, after all, a little warmer than in years past. In the warm chamber of the New Year's banquet, the palace lanterns cast a rosy glow on every face. Hiding behind the ninefold floral screen, I watched Li Shun bring in the box of candied fruits, and suddenly remembered how in my past life, I would always sit rigidly upright until midnight during the New Year's banquet, even covering my smile with a handkerchief, afraid of losing the dignity befitting the Empress Dowager. Your Majesty, it is time for you to preside over the banquet, Li Shun reminded in a low voice. I shook my head while nibbling on a candied date. Go tell the Emperor that I am suffering from a headache today, and let him and Mingyuan host it instead. Oh, and have the imperial kitchen cut the chestnut cakes into small pieces. And don't use overly sweet sauce. Li Shun left, suppressing a laugh. I lifted a corner of the floral screen and saw Xiao Chengyu standing at the head of the hall in a bright yellow dragon robe, looking slightly awkward. Xiao Mingyuan, on the other hand, was quite at ease, raising his wine cup to toast each of the consorts one by one. Lin Xiaowan's parrot perched on his shoulder, chirping, "Good fortune and prosperity, Your Majesty. Today is New Year's Day. We humbly request that the Empress Dowager say a few words to everyone." Some minister started the call, and the others quickly joined in agreement. I stuffed a chestnut cake into my mouth and watched as Xiao Chengyu glanced toward the floral screen. I deliberately coughed loudly, helpless. He could only smile and say, "Her Majesty is not feeling well today, but my brother and I have prepared a performance to entertain everyone." Before the words had fully left his mouth, Xiao Mingyuan suddenly ran off the stage, leading out a goat adorned with a red silk ribbon, none other than the yuanbao that Lady Chen had been raising in the imperial garden. The little one cleared his throat and announced loudly, "I will perform the goat walks the tightrope for everyone." The crowd gasped in surprise, and I nearly choked on my chestnut cake. This idea was clearly borrowed from the acrobatics class I had taught. Yuan Bao stepped onto the tightrope, wobbling on the small wooden cart made by Aunt Chen, while Xiao Mingyuan scattered soybeans nearby. amusing the goat into walking with remarkable steadiness. Bravo! I couldn't help but clap my hands, accidentally knocking over the fruit platter beside me. Li Shun hurried to clean up the mess, but I took the chance to slip behind the screen and continued sneaking bites of the pastries, just as the goat performance ended. Xiao Chengyu actually took to the stage himself, holding a rattle drum in his hand. Followed by a few young eunuchs, he began dancing the folk bamboo horse dance. The dragon robe looked utterly ridiculous on him, yet he laughed heartily. Even the noble consort covered her face, tears of laughter streaming down. This child really knows how to let loose, I muttered, popping another grape into my mouth. The following acts grew even more lively. The virtuous consort's parrot performed fortune-telling with a golden bell in its beak. Lin Xiaowan and Jifeng demonstrated catching arrows mid-air, and even the virtuous consort cradled a wine jar and sang a borderland folk song. My stomach was stuffed full when I suddenly saw Minister Wang stand up, his face flushed, stroking his beard as he declared, I shall also perform the song of striking the earth." The crowd erupted in cheers, and I leaned against the floral screen, laughing so hard I couldn't straighten up. The stern old scholar from my past life, who used to impeach others for indecency, was now singing folk songs at the New Year's banquet. As the hour of midnight approached, Xiao Chengyu suddenly walked up to the floral screen and reached out to help me stand. "Mother Empress, it's time to set off the firecrackers." Looking at the sweat still glistening on his face, I suddenly remembered how he had cried at the New Year's banquet when he was 12. After reciting the wrong blessing, now, he could lead the entire court in mischief without letting the situation spiral out of control. "Not bad, Your Majesty," I whispered. "You've really mastered the art of slacking off." Xiao Chengyu smiled as he helped me to the front of the hall. Suddenly, fireworks burst across the sky, illuminating the fine lines at the corners of his eyes. Xiao Mingyuan ran over, holding my hand with one of his and his with the other. The three of us, grandparents and grandchild, stood under the dazzling display, feeling more like a family than ever before. "Grandmother," Xiao Mingyuan looked up, "can we play like this again at next year's New Year's banquet?" "All right." I gazed at the night sky after the fireworks faded, suddenly feeling my eyes grow warm. "Let's do this every year from now on. If we're going to slack off, we might as well do it with a bang." Li Shun chuckled beside me, handing over a hand warmer. While the distant crackle of firecrackers rose and fell, startling a flock of resting sparrows, it suddenly dawned on me that the true essence of slacking off isn't about escaping reality, but about carving out a sky for fireworks even after recognizing the weight of responsibility. I said. Xiao Mingyuan crouched beside me, watching as I blew dandelion seeds into the air, and suddenly asked, "Grandmother, do you really not want to be involved in court affairs anymore?" I wiped the soil from my hands and smiled. "Look at these dandelions, they fly when the wind comes and settle when it stops. I, the Dowager Empress, am like that wind. I blow when it's time to blow, and I stop when it's time to stop." The little one seemed to half understand, then suddenly pointed into the distance. "Father is coming." Xiao Chengyu held a scroll in his hands, and as he drew closer, I could see it clearly. It was a painting of me teasing a deer at the hunting grounds last year. In the painting, I was leaning against a large rock, with Jin Jing perched on my shoulder, and a majestic deer was lowering its head to graze meekly, all set against a backdrop of a sky filled with sunset clouds. "Mother, look," he said with a smile as he unrolled the scroll. "This is a Western painting technique the court artist has newly learned. It makes the person look as if they were real." I examined the casually tied-up hairstyle of myself in the painting and suddenly recalled how, in my past life, the artists always painted me with solemn dignity, even going so far as to outline my eyebrows 3 times. "Not bad," I nodded. "You've painted me better looking than I actually am, but this deer is too thin. Tell Lady Chen to feed it more soybeans." Xiao Chengyu chuckled, then suddenly turned serious. "Mother, I've been reading the Tao Te Ching recently and came across the line, 'Governing a large state is like cooking a small fish.' It made me suddenly understand your intentions." "Oh," I raised an eyebrow. "Do tell." "Governing a state is like frying a small fish. You can't keep flipping it over and over," he said, watching dandelion seeds drift in the air. "I used to think your hands-off approach was laziness. But now I realize you were letting me make my own mistakes and learn from them, just like these dandelions, seemingly free and unrestrained, yet each has its own direction." I looked at him with relief, suddenly recalling the old nun's words, "Letting go is not giving up." This child has truly grown up after all. "Since you understand now," I patted his shoulder, "then be a good emperor. I, your grieving mother, am going back to bed for a little more sleep." Xiao Chengyu shook his head with a smile. watching my retreating figure heading toward the warm chamber, and suddenly said, "Mother, rest assured, your son will do as you said, approve the memorials that need approving. Rest when it's time to rest, and never follow your past example of working oneself to exhaustion like pine ash." I waved my hand without turning around, yet couldn't help but let a smile curl at the corner of my mouth. The incense in the warm chamber was faint. Jinjing lay dozing on the soft couch, sunlight filtering through the window screen and spilling onto the quilt like scattered gold dust. As I lay down, I suddenly recalled the events of this lifetime, basking in the sun in the garden, teaching the emperor to slack off, watching the crown prince grow up, and fooling around with the imperial concubines. It turns out that a life without burdens can truly be this warm, this light, this carefree. Li Shun, I yawned, draw the curtains if anyone comes. Tell them the Dowager Empress is slacking off and won't see anyone. As you wish. Li Shun's voice carried a hint of laughter. And the room gradually grew quiet. I close my eyes, listening to the wind outside and the soft sound of dandelion seeds landing on the roof tiles, and suddenly feel that this is the life I truly want, not to be the ceaseless wind, but to become a dandelion, flying when it's time to fly, landing when it's time to land, finding truth in letting go, and achieving fulfillment in freedom. As for those matters of nation and world, let the wind blow, let the trees sway. Let those who need to grow walk their own path, and I just want to sleep my extra sleep in this warm room. The end.